I don't remember the last time the truck smelled like work instead of survival. Grease used to mean purpose, hands blackened from fixing someone else's engine, the hum of payment due on Friday. Now it just sits in the air like old sin. I sleep curled in the Chevy's back seat, one boot off, one on, the seatbelt cutting across my ribs. Ironfield's rain has a way of crawling in through cracks you can't see. Every night I feel it trace the metal, slow and cold, like it's checking if I'm still breathing. The town's gone quieter since the factory's folded. Places where sparks once flew now rust in silence. Even the crows sound tired when they pass over the yard. I keep a photograph tucked into the visor. Two boys, mid-laugh, frozen in the flash, before they learned what absence sounds like. Their faces hold the part of me I haven't pawned. Last week, after my last repair job ghosted me on payment, I sold my last tool chest. $612. Exactly enough to scroll through late-night auctions, half awake, thumb hovering over bid. That's how I found the listing. Sealed shipping container. Contents unknown. Local pickup only. The picture showed a gray box with a lean of age, sitting on cracked asphalt. Something about it looked familiar. The pattern of rust, like a fingerprint I'd once traced. Maybe I was just seeing ghosts in iron. Either way, I bid. The confirmation email came like a spark under wet kindling. Congratulations, you've won. I told myself it was scrap, maybe parts I could sell, but deep down, it was the thrill of chance, the idea that something sealed and forgotten might still hold meaning. The unknown felt kinder than the known for once. At night I couldn't sleep. Every engine sound outside made me flinch. I counted the minutes between train horns. My stomach growled against the quiet, that hollow ache of pride and hunger. I thought about my father's hands, calloused, thick, always steady, even when the mill cut his hours. He used to say, "You keep working even when the world quits on you. That's how a man stays whole." But what if the world took your work and your name both? What's left to keep? I stared at the photograph till dawn lights led across the dashboard. The Chevy's windows fogged over, trapping the smell of oil and old bread. For a second, I imagined the container sitting out there waiting for me, heavy with its secret, as if it had been waiting a long time just for me to come open it. Tomorrow they'll deliver it to the yard. Maybe it's nothing, junk and rust, like everything else left behind here. Or maybe it's something that makes sense of all this loss. Either way, when that truck pulls in, I'll be ready.
They dropped the container just after sunrise. The diesel growled, shaking the puddles across the cracked yard. Steam rose from the pavement where the rain met exhaust, the air sharp with iron and morning chill. I signed for it with a borrowed pen, my name a shaky line on the clipboard. The driver didn't say much, just nodded, climbed back into his rig, and left me standing there with 6,000 pounds of mystery humming in my chest. The padlock looked fused, like time had melted it shut. I set the grinder against it and squeezed. Sparks spat back at me, peppering my wrists. The smell of burnt metal mixing with wet rust and cold air. The lock snapped free, clattering against the door. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing hard, hand on the latch. When I pulled the tarp aside, I saw the logo. Blue paint faded to ash gray, but still legible. Reynolds and Company, arched across the steel in proud black letters. My breath caught. I hadn't seen that name since the layoffs, since the day the plant gates closed and men carried home the empty lunch pails like tombstones. The sight hit me low, like a kick I didn't brace for. My throat tightened. Every curse I'd ever swallowed on that assembly floor came roaring back. The long shifts, the unpaid overtime, the promises of temporary closure. We all knew it was permanent the minute Coleman stopped showing up in person. Inside, the air was stale, thick with paper rot and motor oil. Stacks of boxes leaned like drunks against the walls. I tore one open. Yellowed manifests, brittle folders, a ledger with carbon copies still clinging together. My heart started pounding faster than my hands could turn the pages. Each sheet bore signatures, stamps, transfers, all from the final year before the shutdown. I froze when I saw the name, R. Coleman, scrawled neat and proud across the bottom of shipment forms marked hazardous waste disposal. But the destinations didn't match the records we'd been told. They'd sent materials into the ground near the river, not to the disposal site upstate. I sat on a crate, papers spread across my knees. The wind outside rattled the container walls like a warning. My paws buzzed behind my ears. This wasn't just abandoned junk. This was proof. Proof that Ironfield hadn't died from bad luck or a weak market. Someone had buried the town to save themselves. In the back corner, something small caught the light. I reached down and picked it up, a brass key engraved with a number, 9. I rubbed my thumb across it, feeling the etch dig into my skin. I didn't know what it opened, but I knew it wasn't meant to be found.
By nightfall, the container felt like a heartbeat I couldn't quiet. I dragged a shop light inside, hooked it to the van's battery, and sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor. The light hummed and swayed, painting everything in a faint orange glow. Dust rose from every page I touched, carrying that dry smell of ink and mildew, the scent of time trying to erase itself. I spread the manifests across the floor, careful not to tear the corners. The pages whispered as I moved them, voices of men who'd signed their names, thinking nobody would read them again. Near the bottom of one stack, a ledger listed payroll transfers. My name, S. Brown, sat printed in black ink beside numbers I'd never earned. At first I thought it was memory playing tricks, but the signature was there, tight and angled like mine. Only it wasn't mine. Someone had forged it. My stomach clenched. The paper shook between my fingers. I traced the line of ink, the curl of the B, and felt heat crawl up my neck. They'd used my name to move company assets the week the plant shut down. Transfers to shell accounts, falsified equipment orders. Every number pointed to theft dressed up as liquidation. Coleman hadn't just abandoned us. He'd used us. He'd used me. I pressed my hands to my face, the paper crumpling under my palms. The lamp flickered, and for a second it felt like the whole container breathed with me, airtight, heavy, charged. Shame and rage sat side by side in my gut, fighting for space. For years, I'd blamed myself for not fighting harder when the layoffs came, for letting the bank take the house, for losing the boys to their mother's new city life. I'd thought failure was my fault. But staring at those ledgers, I saw the lie stretched across decades. Clean signatures, false records, all built on men like me who'd been told to keep quiet. I could have sold the truck, palmed the papers for scrap, but that would have made me complicit again. I folded the ledger carefully and slid it into a plastic sleeve, sealing it with shaking fingers. My hands still smelled of oil and anger. When I stepped out, the night had gone soft and fog-thick. A train horn moaned somewhere far off. I leaned against the truck, chest tight, trying to breathe through the weight pressing down. I had found truth, but truth wasn't comfort. It was responsibility. Tomorrow I'd start copying the documents. Proof doesn't mean much if it only lives in one place. I turned to close the container and stopped. Papers near the entrance were shifted, just slightly. A few missing from the corner stack. Someone had already been inside.
Morning came gray and mean, the kind of late that makes rust look redder. I drove the Chevy into town, a folder of photocopies riding shotgun, my stomach rolling like bad bearings. The Ironfield Gazette squatted at the corner of Main and 2nd, brick-chipped, windows fogged, a tired sign that read, "Serving the community since 1934. Inside, the air smelled of coffee gone cold and newsprint long out of date. The editor, Mr. Leary, sat behind a desk crowded with unpaid bills and half-empty mugs. He squinted at the pages I slid across the wood. "That's a heavy accusation," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You got any official proof this isn't just misfiled paperwork?" "Official proof," I said, almost laughing. "You think the folks who buried this left the notarized confession?" He frowned. "You don't understand, Sam. The Gazette's barely standing. Coleman still has friends in city council. We print this, we lose advertisers. You lose more than that." I felt my jaw lock. "So the truth waits for someone richer to tell it?" Leary sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'm sorry. Truly, I can't risk a libel suit. You didn't hear it from me, but there's a freelancer still digging around old Reynolds leads. Name's June Lawson. Maybe she's your kind of brave." I left before he could finish, heat rising behind my eyes. The rain had picked up again, each drop bouncing off my hood like tiny fists. I parked outside the diner where June worked between assignments. She was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, wearing a denim jacket patched with slogans that meant something once. When I handed her the folder, she didn't flinch. She flipped through the pages slow, lips pressing tighter with each sheet. "These are clean copies?" she asked. "From the originals," I said. "There's more." June leaned back, tapping the corner of the paper. "If what you're saying's true, this could shake half the town, but you understand what happens to people who dig at the roots." "I've already been buried." For the first time, she smiled, small, tired, but real. "Then let's unearth it together." We spent the afternoon in her kitchen, scanning every page into her old laptop, labeling files, whispering names like they might hear us. She promised to publish quietly first, one piece, just enough to draw light without fire. When I left, the street was empty, puddles shining under the last bit of daylight. For the first time in years, I felt the air shift around Ironfield. Not hope, exactly, but the faint rustle of something waking up. June called just before midnight. "Sam," she said, voice low, "we'll run it. But you should know, Coleman still has reach. Don't sleep near that container tonight."
The story ran small at first, just a sidebar on June's blog with a headline no one expected to matter. Ironfield waste cover-up. New evidence emerges. But by nightfall, the comments filled with names I hadn't heard in years. Former workers, widows, sons who lost fathers to mystery illness. It spread quiet but fast, like oil on water. Then came the backlash. 2 days after it posted, someone shattered the back window of my Chevys. The glass sparkled across the seat like ice. No theft. Just a message. I swept it up with shaking hands, heart thudding against my ribs. The same morning, the Gazette ran a smear piece calling me a disgruntled ex-employee seeking attention. June called it slander. I called it expected. That night, I found the container's doors open. The hasp hung twisted, padlock gone. Inside, the papers were scattered, boot prints stamped across the floor. Some manifests, the ones bearing Coleman's signature, were missing entirely. The sight hollowed me out. I dropped to my knees, sifting through the wreckage till my fingers turned black with dust. I wanted to shout, to swing at the metal walls till my arms gave out. Instead, I packed what remained, loaded the boxes into the van, and drove to June's place. She met me at the door in an old hoodie, eyes wide, coffee mug, trembling slightly in her hand. "They're watching," she said, before I even spoke. "My inbox is flooded. Some messages I can't trace. You sure you want to keep going?" I nodded. If we stop now, they win twice. We moved the boxes to her basement, sealed the window wells with plastic, double-locked the door. For a week, we worked under lamplight, scanning everything we could salvage. Every click of her keyboard felt like a heartbeat, proof refusing to die. Sleep was a luxury neither of us could afford. Some nights I sat by the window, listening to tires crunch gravel outside, telling myself it was just delivery trucks or teenagers. Still, the shadows moved too slow to be wind. When June finally uploaded the full cachet, hundreds of pages and a timeline linking Coleman's signature to off-book waste dumping, we watched the progress bar crawl like it was hauling the whole town's ghosts with it. When it finished, she whispered, "It's live." Hours later, independent outlets started sharing links. Old friends texted for the first time in years, half scared, half proud. The silence that used to smother Ironfield began to crack. Then my phone buzzed with the new message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. "Stop digging, Brown. It's over."
The message stayed burned into my screen, even after I deleted it. I caught myself checking every car that slowed near the yard, every stranger at the diner who looked twice too long. Still, the story wouldn't stay quiet. By the next week, June's report hit an independent TV outlet. A 6-minute segment filmed in her living room, the reporter's voice steady but electric. They flashed old photographs of the plant, faces lined and tired, the camera cut into my hands clutching those stained papers. The sound of my name on the air made my pulse stutter. At first, Ironfield tried to act like it didn't care. Then something shifted. Men I used to work beside started talking, at the barber shop, in the parking lot of the Baptist church, online where nobody could censor them. One of them sent me a video of runoff by the river, thick and brown even after all these years. "You were right," he said. "We've been drinking poison." A week later, Coleman appeared at the county gala, smiling under chandeliers like the truth couldn't touch him. June said not to go, but I showed up anyway, in my cleanest shirt and work boots polished with spit. The place smelled like money and fear, fresh flowers, old whiskey, a hint of bleach. I found him near the buffet table, laughing with the mayor. My chest tightened, but the anger steadied me. I walked right up, the crowd parting just enough to let the tension breathe. "You remember me?" I asked. Coleman froze mid-smile. "Samuel Brown," he said softly, like the name was a surprise he'd meant to forget. "You buried this town," I said, my voice carried farther than I intended. Heads turned, phones lifted. "You signed those shipments, stole from every man who broke his back for you." Cameras caught it all. The flash bright, the room hum rising. Coleman's jaw clenched, his PR man stepping forward with a nervous grin, muttering about misunderstandings. But it was too late. The story had found faces now. That night, social feeds lit up. Mechanic confronts former exec. Hashtags spun out like wildfire. For every troll calling me bitter, 10 people reposted the video with fire emojis and words like justice. Days later, June called, her voice trembling with something close to awe. "Sam, the federal office reopened the Reynolds file. Subpoenas are going out. They listed you as a key witness." I leaned against the truck. The smell of oil grounded me. Vindication felt sharp, almost dangerous, like holding a live wire. The wind rattled the container door behind me, loose and hollow as a warning.
The subpoena came folded in stiff paper, government seal pressed sharp enough to cut. I ran my thumb along the crease before opening it, the sound dry as sand. It felt heavier than 6 pages should. June met me outside the courthouse 2 weeks later, wearing tugging a scarf, a thermos of coffee between her hands. The hearings were public, Cameras lined along the sidewalk. Ironfield hadn't seen this much attention since the plant's grand opening 3 decades ago. Inside, the air buzzed with the hum of lights and whispers. I took my seat near the back, shoulders stiff, trying to look smaller than I felt. One by one, witnesses stepped up, former supervisors, clerks, even a safety inspector who admitted he'd been told to falsify a soil test. June's notes clicked beside me like metronome ticks, marking a new truth into record. When they called my name, my legs felt like rebar. I swore in, palms sweating against the Bible's thin pages. My voice shook only once when they asked what we lost. Homes, I said. Jobs. Fathers. Some lost their lungs. Some lost their names. The room went still. I let the silence carry where words couldn't. By the third day, Coleman's lawyers had grown pale and brittle. Documents we scanned together lit up on courtroom screens. His signature looping across fraudulent orders, shipment laws contradicting permits. He sat there, jaw set, pretending the air around him wasn't collapsing. When the resignation came a week later, it hit the local news first. Reynolds' executive steps down amid ethics inquiry. No apology, no confession. Just a retreat disguised as dignity. Still, the streets buzz at night. People honk past in the Gazette office. Teenagers spray-painted "We Remember" on the old factory gate. But victory felt thin. I went back to my truck, opened the glove box, and pulled out the photo of my boys. They were older now, voices deeper on the phone, polite but distant. I wanted to tell them everything had been worth it, but the truth sat heavier than that. Justice doesn't fix a lifetime. It just stops the bleeding long enough to heal crooked. Weeks passed. Hearings rolled on without me. Coleman's network frayed under pressure. Some smaller names took plea deals. Others vanished into consultancy jobs somewhere else. Still, something in Ironfield began to breathe again. The diner reopened its second shift. A new welding shop set up in one of the old lots. Even the air smelled cleaner, like the town exhaled for the first time in years. One evening, I drove back to the yard. The container stood where it always had, streaked with rust, edges softened by rain. I pressed my palm to the metal, cold, rough, familiar. It didn't hold secrets anymore, just echoes.
Months passed before I noticed how quiet Ironfield had become. Not the silence of loss, the other kind. The stillness that comes when a wound begins to close. The air didn't smell like rot anymore. It smelled like wet grass, like engines cooling after a long drive. Most mornings I'm under a hood again, patching up neighbor cars for cash or trade. People bring me coffee, sometimes pie, sometimes just talk. I don't ask what side they were on when things first cracked open. It doesn't matter now. Folks just want things fixed. So do I. Letters still come. Some typed, some handwritten, folded around old pay stubs or photographs. A widow thanking me for not letting them forget. A man who says I cost him his pension. Truth doesn't make everyone whole. I read each one anyway, then stack them in a box beside the photo of my sons. June stops by some Sundays with her recorder and a smile that hides exhaustion. She's writing a book now, calls it Rusted Hope. Says she wants the story to end with a mechanic who refused to quit. I tell her that sounds too noble, but she just laughs. Maybe people need a little noble right now, she says. I think about my father often. His steady hands, the rhythm of his breath when he worked. I used to believe staying whole meant holding on. Now I think it means knowing what to let go of. Last week, I opened the container's doors for the first time in months. The hinges groaned but gave way. Light poured in, cutting through the dust like forgiveness. Inside, only empty crates and scraps remained, the air cool and clean. I stood there a long time, letting the wind sweep through. When I walked away, my palms smelled of oil and rain. The
The same mix that once marked failure, but now felt like life still turning. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had shifted, and I was still here to feel it. Down the street, a boy rode past on a bike, singing off-key to some song on his phone. The sound echoed against the warehouses, thin but full of promise. I smiled, without meaning to.